Hi everyone and welcome back. So today we're going to look to the yoga practice again for our breathing technique, and we're going to look at Ujjayi Pranayama, or how it's often titled, the ocean breath. And it's that title that we're going to deep dive into. So the breathing technique is one where we start to include a sound, and similar to techniques that we've used previously, sound is really important, particularly being able to create internal sounds and be aware of internal sounds. Because if we're able to be aware and focus our attention on internal sounds, it means that we're gaining a greater mastery of our sense organs. And our sense organs, which are all pointing outwards, always taking in information, and because of the level and the volume of information that they are able to take in and that we are facing in the modern world, it means that all this information is coming into one point. We have all this information to sift through and sort and decode and interact with and judge and analyse and utilise and transform into action, that it can be incredibly challenging for our minds. And we know that's one of the downfalls of the modern world, or one of the things that we need to gain a greater ability to contend with or manage in the modern world. The amount of sensory information and how we process that. Now, when we use sound with our breathing techniques, when we use tones with our breathing techniques, we encourage our sense organs to turn inward. So that means for a brief period of time, we're able to give our minds less things to sift through, less things to think about, less things to organise, and we can really start to hone in on a specific mental pattern. And we know from science that a busy mind, an overactive mind, leads to an anxious mind and often even a depressed mind. Where a focused mind is a mind that is balanced, equanimous, a mind that is able to direct its path and that is more relaxed. And more importantly, better at perception taking, better at environmental perception taking, knowing how to act and move within the world. So here's the technique for us. We're going to start by opening our mouth. We're going to place our index finger into the very cup of our throat here, which is where our throat is. And when we breathe, I want you to contract this area of the throat. Imagine that you are trying to draw the air in against this area of the throat and create almost this suction type of feeling. We get this sound, this. And as we do that, our mouth becomes a little dry, so we need to swallow a few times. But also we feel a suction of the index finger be sucked into the throat. Now on the way out, we do the opposite. We open this area of the throat and imagine you're frosting up a mirror or a glass and you get this. So we've got the on the way in and on the way out. So I want you to do that a few times now. And after each time, you probably have to swallow a few times. The throat will get quite dry from doing it. But what's important here is the action and the mechanics of your ability to contract or restrict the air coming through the throat, and also that sound. Because that sound is going to tell us that the mechanics are kind of going in the right direction. Next, what we need to do is we need to turn this into nasal breathing. So we need to close our lips, try to create that same sound. And also what we need to do is try to allow the sound to be a little bit smoother. So we said in the beginning, the introduction, that this breath is often termed as the ocean breath. The idea is that this breath aligns with the sounds of the ocean. Or for me, it most closely aligns with those kind of final few kind of lapping waves as the tide's going out. So, right at the end, we can kind of conjure up that imagery and that sense and those sounds, where when the water's coming in and it kind of drags its way onto the beach, it pauses, and then you get that as it enters back into the sea, as the tide's leaving. It's that kind of sound, and for me, that kind of rhythm. So it's not a forced, it's that beautiful, really smooth, really calming, and really almost exciting for the mind, or not exciting for the mind. It's more that it's very attractive to the mind. That sound and everything that we conjure up from, the tide going out, it's beautiful. It gets us back to nature and it makes us feel calm. And if we can mimic that sound, or if we can create that internal sound in ourselves, our mind will become almost hypnotized by it, perplexed by it, and we experience that calming nature of ourselves come further forwards. Now, to enhance the sound, there's a few things that we can do. So I don't know what it was like in your childhood, but when I was a child and would go to the beach, my mum would often say, you can go to there's always a shell shop, isn't there? But there is in the UK, there was a shell shop, or sometimes in Spain you'd get it as well. And there'd be shells that are painted up and all glossed up. And she'd say, hold that shell next to your ear, you can hear the ocean. And that's what we'd buy, and then you'd hold the shell next to your ear, and you'd be completely hypnotized and perplexed that you could hear the entire ocean in a shell. Well, our hands are going to be our shells. So we cup our hands, we rest both hands over our ears to close our ears up, and that means that we're limiting the amount of sound from the external world, and it means we can really focus on creating those beautifully soft waves within the throat, and they can really resonate. And what I want you to do, not just yet, but in a moment, take this position, seal the lips, close your eyes, bring your awareness down to the throat. But I want you to try to smooth that sound out so that when we breathe in, we get that. Okay, so I'm going to join you. Hands over ears, lips sealed, and let's just do this for a few moments. Okay. Now what you may have heard from my breath pattern and what you may have experienced yourself is that when we first start practicing this breath, it's very fractured. We often push and pull too much. We get the it's quite shuddery. When we start to relax from that and we start to really connect into the sound, it becomes softer and smoother and more lengthened. Final thing to say, or final two things to say, is one, this is actually a stimulating breath technique. Because we constrict the area of the throat, we start to reduce the amount of area that comes in. That actually starts to change and disrupt the CO2 and oxygen levels, like we've previously mentioned, and it's an upregulator of our system. But it's an upregulator of our system in this really focused, calm way. So it's not like having loads of caffeine or stimulants and there's loads of stuff going on, you've got all this energy and it feels quite edgy. It's not that. It's this slow building of energy, but in this really focused mental pattern and state. So it's a breathing technique that we can use at any time, but for me, it's one that we will use in the more stimulating practices because it gives us this pinpoint accuracy and focus for our mind, but gives this incredible uplift of energy. Final thing to say is that the more we advance this practice, the quieter that sound becomes, not louder. Often when you hear it practiced in yoga classes, sometimes it becomes like a competition over who can mimic Darth Vader the best and the loudest. And you get all these sounds coming forwards. And really what we want the sound to be very soft and very subtle, less aggravation, less force, and so quiet, so soft, that it's more challenging for our mind to really experience it. It has to really concentrate because that sound is so quiet. But you are aware that you are definitely creating that sound. If you stop the sound altogether, there is no practice. So as you advance this, whether it's on this course or in future courses, hold that or take that with you. In all of the yoga practice, and for me in the breathing technique and the breathwork coaching practice too, one of the things I emphasize is that the more advanced you get, the more subtle the practice gets. The gentler it gets, the more subtle, the less gross. When we can do that, we're bringing in that mind, heart, breath, coherence and connection. And that means that we get a greater benefit from it, both physically, or not both, physically, emotionally, mentally and spiritually. That's what we want. Thank you for listening today. I will see you in the guided practice. Take care.